All right. So this is what our tool does right now. So obviously there's a larger vision of, it's flickering on my side. Ankit, is it good? Like
So
showing
it's
up?
good, Joy. We can.
Okay.
It's
All
not
right.
big
Okay.
deal.
Yeah, it's sort of it's going in and out for me. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so what we do is we monitor conversations on Slack, and the main thing that we are doing is we are trying to bring AI and NLP techniques into this, and not sort of just do vanilla sort of reporting kind of stuff and rule based stuff. Uh, we've tried to model our software for situations where Slack is being used as a sort of like a service desk or to help people or provide some kind of support and so on. So the software, as it goes through the discussions, it finds important requests from customers and stakeholders. And once it has an understanding, it sort of has some built-in workflow kind of technology, which allows it to notify people and do various integrations. It does so for example, it can also file tickets and stuff to external tools and so on. There is some reporting angles, right? So you can, once you have a structured view of Slack discussions, you can go back and look at older requests and so on. And then finally, it has some service metrics. So what we have been targeting are sort of these kind of situations. One is, we see a lot of companies, and I'd be very curious to learn whether Temporal IO also has similar patterns. A lot of new age companies have, the moment they start onboarding a customer, they open up a Slack channel and they start with a few, and then it quickly starts mushrooming. There's internal escalation channels, so often between customer success or salespeople to like support teams, support to engineering, and so on. So these are like fewer in number, but they often have a high volume. And of course, there is the open source part. So there is some commonality across all of these use cases. And the problems that we feel like we can tackle right now are, hey, it's very easy to miss requests because you just miss it, or you start sort of having a conversation and then you forget, you go off for coffee or something, come back, you forget about it. These are unstructured tools, so there's no notion of priority or any kind of structure really. And of course, there's no metrics, right? So what we feel is that with a tool like this, sitting on top of Slack and monitoring these kind of forums, we can solve some of these problems. So quick overview of what the way this works, and this will help in the demo, as we go through it. So as I mentioned, one of the key things we are doing is trying to use some newer technologies to make sense of this data. So as we are going through these Slack rooms, we first of all find conversational boundaries. This is a tricky problem because not all discussions in Slack happen on threads. A lot of them are just, some of them, can be on just messages at the top level in the channel itself. Depends on the use case, like in some cases, people use threads in a very disciplined manner, in other places we don't. So we try to use NLP technologies to find out boundaries in the conversations, and we structure every Slack room into a set of distinct conversations. Then we have something called a notion of a request, which is a request to do something, like, so somebody says, hey, like do something for me, or they ask you a question, or they report a problem. So these are sort of roughly the three categories that we've built models on, and we lump them together and call them requests. Once we identify a request, this part is straightforward, we maintain some state. So as part of the setup, admins tell us, who's a customer and who's sort of a responder. So there is some simple metadata around, hey, my team is responding. We are these 5 people, or we are from this email domain, and everybody else is a customer or somebody who's sort of raising requests. And once we get a request from somebody who looks like a customer, we sort of start maintaining state automatically. So you don't have to create a ticket, you don't have to file a task. We just internally understand that this is the starting point of a request. It starts off in the open state, there's no response, goes into some in progress state when there's a response, and so on and so forth. And as new questions are asked, it can be reopened and so on. And because we understand the structure now, we can start doing workflows based on these requests. So we can drive workflows based on various conditions. So for example, in this particular example, we have a customer request, and if it stays open for a certain amount of time, and there's no response, we can notify a customer success person, typical sort of a corporate situation. In open source environment, it could be one of the maintainers or a developer evangelist or something like that. Or it could be, power users in that forum, and that's kind of like the things that I would love to get some feedback from you. We can also drive other kind of workflows, so we can look up, for example, a knowledge base, like, maybe we can look up Stack Overflow or something like that, and sort of, give some automatic responses back. So those are sort of like many different kinds of things we can do. Users can come back later on to our web application and look at a very different way of looking at the Slack room, which is a set of requests and responses. So they can filter, so they can say, okay, I want to see requests that were open for 14 days and nobody responded, because that sounds bad. That just sounds like in the support environment, we'd call it SLA miss. So they can essentially, apply some filters, look up older discussions and do something with them. They can assign it to somebody to take a look, and so on. So for example, we can also, and this is the kind of things, we have been brainstorming, is one of the things that we might be able to offer in this kind of interface is to say, look, let's look at older requests, which have sort of, the discussion has been finished, and we could send it to a external knowledge base, maybe an FAQ somewhere, just post it in a public forum, or just archive it somewhere which Google can index and so on. We haven't built all those things, but those are the kinds of things that we think would be interesting to do from this kind of an interface. There's also a feature called collection, so you can look at multiple channels from one place. So you can just say, okay, look, I want to define a collection, and I want to look at, troubleshooting issues and my cloud service issues or whatever, right? 5-6 channels, clump them together, and see them from the same dashboard. So you can see all activity across multiple channels from this web dashboard in a single place. I'll show you a demo of this as we go along. There's some metrics, right? So usual, I guess you already said that many of the tools are doing metrics, so nothing surprising here. Just sort of volume of requests, wait time, all that kind of stuff.
More importantly, metrics going up doesn't mean good.
So again, sorry.
Metrics going up doesn't mean good.
Yeah.
Metrics going up may not be good. It may be good in the sense that there's a lot of interest in your community, but then maybe bad in the sense that your product doesn't answer a lot of questions.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very subjective thing. I can't really comment on that. And like I said, like the thrust here is to try and bring the AI and NLP technologies to bear. Obviously, that's not the only thing. There's a lot of traditional software going on, but we are trying to make these technologies usable, right? So for example, it's not just about detecting requests. We detect priority. We have some inbuilt notion of what high priority means. Obviously, that model may need to be tuned on a case-by-case basis, but we have some default notion. Similarly, we have notions of closures, right? So somebody saying, look, thanks a lot, my problem is resolved, and so some of that, we can pick up automatically and just say, tag the request and saying that, look, this is done. There are other, and over time, we're adding more and more such models. So for example, there's a notion of pendency, right? So the request could be pending on, like inside a request, you could have, the last thing that could have happened is a question was asked to a person, and our software would pick that up and say, okay, look, I understand this discussion is in progress, but at this specific point in time, it's pending on some individual X, right? And so depending on that, whether that individual is your customer or it's your own team, you can use that in the filters, and you can have a different response based on that. We've been working on this for the last few months. We have a small team out of India. We are all in Bangalore. We have a SaaS endpoint available for trials and so on. And also, we have done private deployments as well for some companies. There's a few early stage and late stage companies we have interest from and we are working with. So I would say, sort of right now, at least Series B onwards is probably our sweet spot, because companies grow to a certain stage where they start feeling these problems of sort of too many communications and trying to optimize that, or you have some tools to help them deal with that. And this is who we are. It's Ankit, myself, one more co-founder who does the engineering part. We worked at various companies, started companies in the past and so on, US based, but everybody's in India right now. So that's kind of quickly about the product at a higher level. I can just pause here for a few minutes and just get some early thoughts from you, or I can also go into demo. But yeah, I would love to get some quick thoughts if you have.
Could you go back to the early user slide? I just want to make sure I really internalize. Okay, there's customer support escalation, pre-sales team onboarding, and then open source community Slack internal channels. Okay, I think that for support, this product's very focused for support. It feels very focused for support.
Right.
Whereas for community building, it feels a little bit less relevant because it's more about conversations about topics and stuff like that. Do you think that is true, or do you think that most community is just equals support?
Yeah, I think that is true. Because we designed this first and foremost we started off by thinking about corporate use cases and how we could sort of build a commercial tool, right? But we also feel like the open source part is interesting. Honestly, it's just something we feel is interesting. One is that we ourselves are able to benefit a lot from some of these open source forums, because we can extract some of the conversations, train some models, and so on. So that data is relatively open for us. And we've been getting some interest, and that's also the other part, that where we have been getting interest is some folks seem to like the escalation part. They just say that, look, I want to be on top of discussions that are happening in my community, and I want to be responsive. That's what will make users happy. So, I'd love to set that up. There's a lot of people who are saying, actually asking for more interesting analytics. So they're saying, since you're in the business of understanding these conversations, can you go deeper and find me trends, find me how topics are sort of what topics are trending, what's changing, and sort of and what should I sort of worry about, and things like that. Like in terms of building features, like what kind of things are sort of rising in sort of traffic, and which I should focus on from, let's say, a product management point of view, or things like that. So I think there's been some feedback along those lines. Yeah, but it's and I think we are also using this opportunity to just learn and just get some feedback from you, and see, just hear from you. So actually, one of these users actually mentioned Orbit and what's the other one? Community.
Common Room.
So we weren't actually familiar with this, but one of the teams we were interacting with actually bought these tools up and said that, this seems like complementary and different in some ways. But yes, I mean, we are still learning. We're very early, so we're trying to figure out, what will work, what's our sweet spot, and so on. I mean, one interest definitely I would say we have is that outside of the commercial value, open source is also interesting for us because there's a community, and if we can find a fit, it also gets us some exposure that we may not get quickly if we were just sort of selling the software. So I think there is some interest as a interesting sort of a way of evangelizing the software. But yeah, we are mostly here to learn.
Sure. Yeah. My default. So Common Room also has some kind of very primitive text extraction stuff where you can see like incidents of some keywords going up and down. I'm extremely skeptical of all these. We're not going to make product decisions based on these very superficial mentions. Obviously, I keep my mind open, and if you're some AI genius that has really cracked it, let us know. But otherwise, most people are just throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. They're even trying to sell us on like sentiment. Oh, sentiment's going up. You're doing a good job this week. It's bullshit. Like, I also know how to run the pandas function to run the sentiment analysis. I know it's just a bag of words that is, randomly rated by some dude like 10 years ago, with no context whatsoever. So like, I mean, that's when people call that AI, I always I think it's a red flag. But I mean, grouping I think is interesting. Can you go to slide 12?
Slide 12.
This is okay. So yeah, identifying requests, identifying closures, promise. Yeah, this seems very support driven, which is good. It's just like wasn't what I was thinking when
Sure. Let's
when
turn
I
the mic
brought up
over.
community.
What are the
Yeah.
what were you looking for? Would be very interesting to hear. Where you are coming in from and so on. Not that we would build it, but just to
Yeah,
also
yeah,
learn
yeah.
from you. Yeah.
No, I'm not. I think there's a place for this. I don't know how valuable it is. Essentially, what you're building is kind of like a sort of AI-driven front, front,
Yeah.
that is very focused on chat forums, because obviously chat is extremely unstructured data, and so what you're doing is you're introducing some order and like turning it into a support forum, which is good. There's some value for that. They're competing tools, but none of them do what you do. So these are good things. Whereas I tend to treat to what extent do we treat our chats as support forums? That is a very tricky topic to dive into, because we have separate support software to do that, right? We have Discourse. The non-techie people might have like Help Scout, and of course this front itself. All of these, like, which have very formal, like, okay, open request, close request, like there's very formally marked statuses. The only thing that they don't do is chat. So essentially, you're just kind of like you currently help turn chat into one of those other forums, right? And chat just feels to be a more natural medium. I get it, right? Like people respond faster, all that. What we're trying to do with chat is a little bit different. I think what a lot of companies do, like this is the reality of a lot of community, quote community, which is just a glorified support forum for people who are too lazy to wait in a discourse forum. They want instant response, right? So a lot of companies, especially startups, when they're so hungry for user traction, they'll just be on Slack all day long and sacrifice work-life balance to respond to all these users. But whereas community building is a little bit different in my mind, in a sense that we want our users to hang around and talk to each other. We want our users to not open a case so much as say, hey, I'm interested in discussing this topic, and come to us to talk about it. And not just with us, but with the rest of the people that are in our community. You see how that, like, and the conversation may not end. I have conversations that are ongoing, that are side discussions in Discord that have been going on for months. And then there's obviously the question of threading. For example, so I help to run Svelte Society, which is an open source community for the Svelte framework. And we've created, like, how we solve this support requesting. I could show you. It's a bot. It's let me bring it up before I'm not saying this is the same thing, but like we have solved it in a very primitive way that, like, so we have a bot. We have a Svelte bot, I think. So there's a bot, and then every time someone asks a question, it automatically opens a thread, right? And then when it's answered, it's checked off, so people know that they don't have to answer it anymore, right?
The checkoff is done by the person who asked the
manually
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very common. A lot of chat forums, they all have something like this, right? But like this is obviously very high precision because all done manually.
Of course.
So to what scale does it make sense to automate this and allow some imperfection in exchange for no manual process being needed? That is the unsolved question for you guys. But like, would I adopt Clearfeed for Svelte Society? I don't know. This thing is kind of working well. I don't necessarily see the value for my community, even for the support use case. That's what I mean. Obviously, you guys as founders, you have to be more optimistic about this than me. There's a given. But that's how I think about this. Like, there's so much automation. Like, have you come across the TypeScript community as well? They have a lot of, oh, I think I left it already. The Microsoft official TypeScript language community, they have a lot of automation to set up new channels or automatically assign you to channels when you ask a question. And then the maintainers will get on with you and help you resolve the channel. And once your situation is resolved, they'll release the channel, and that conversation will be archived and new channels will be created for the next question. It's just a really amazing amount of automation that can be done with Discord. So I don't know. It's pretty cool, but you do have competition.
This was this was a Discord. This was a Discord forum or a Slack forum? Sorry,
Discord.
It was Discord. Okay,
but sorry. Like, yeah, there's fundamentally nothing new that, like, you could do it with Slack as well. They just happen to be in Discord. Slack and Discord are so close.
Just so that Sean, we pick the comments in the right context. What are the number of channels, and what is the number of maintainers and the number of
TypeScript? It's probably like, I don't know, 20 channels. And then the core maintainers TypeScript are like maybe like 30 people, but then they have community helpers, and I don't know how many there are. You can just join it. It's a public chat. It's a public Discord. Just go join it, check it out. Their automation is the best I've ever seen in any programming community. Mostly because they're nerds and they like to write bots for fun. But like, you know, someone could productionize it, and then now it's a company that like competes with you.
I mean, there's always that, right? Like you can learn from the people who sort of know how to help themselves and do some of that stuff for people who don't know how to do themselves. Then second part was the AI part. I think was, you know, I think that's something that's, it's not too hard these days, but it's kind of not that accessible. Just like still a fair amount of effort required to sort of put these models in production and so on.
Anyway, cool. So you know, I think I do think that something that maybe it's kind of triaging is an interesting area, which I was kind of looking for in your deck, but I didn't see. In the sense of like, okay, if this matches like with like 90% certainty to a knowledge base question or previously answered question, let's just proactively surface it to the asker, so they might actually resolve themselves without any manual intervention. I'm sure this has probably come up before. And if there's a signed owner for a topic, then tag that owner, because it's a chat. Then, you know, I don't have to look at all the unread messages. I can just see where I was tagged, stuff like that. So
assigned owner would be based on like some keywords or something like that.
And maybe the channel that was posted in, you know, whatever context is given to you to arrive at a probability heuristic, and then, you know, if it's over a certain barrier, you tag the guy. I think
the triaging part we have heard. We're trying not to get into the knowledge base part itself, but we can certainly like do some searches and so on.
Why? I'm just saying surfacing knowledge base, not necessarily you doing the knowledge base.
I mean, I think it's a tactical choice because there's a number of firms who are trying to do sort of question answering, you know, based on sort of all the new AI stuff.
I see.
So I think we're trying to find our own niche and then maybe partner with some of these teams. You could argue that that's a classic search problem also to some extent, right? So, I mean, you go and ask questions on Google, it actually gives a pretty decent response these days. So we've been sort of approaching this from the human end, that like, how can we build humans? How can we help humans? And we can always do a search, right? So if there's I give you the example, right? We can always do an automated search. If we detect a request, we can always do an automated search against Stack Overflow or Discourse forum or, you know, some documentation website, and send that to the person who asked the question. If somebody finds that useful, we can always do that. But to go from there to actually building a best in breed sort of question answering system would be, it's a different sort of Different
Sure.
domain, different niche. Yeah.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah. But would that be useful? I mean, I'm curious, like.
Don't let me distract you from your core job. No, seriously, like, yeah, I'm very happy with that, with the response that you gave. So yeah, good enough.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So yeah, so you were saying that you were looking for triaging, some kind of owner tagging. Yeah, I think I interrupted you.
So what do you mean by triage? I mean, can you give a specific use case so that we really are able to understand things in the context, right? What do you mean by triage? What's the use case that you want to solve?
I mean, no, not. I don't know about use case. It's just more about work behavior. In the sense that when all these questions come in, usually a lot of times the user doesn't even know who to ask, so they just dump it in a general support channel, and then they'll say like, "Yeah, I'm facing problems with whatever." Sometimes you'll have to ask some clarifying questions, like, what version are you using? What operating system are you using? That kind of nonsense. And then, if it focuses on a particular feature or language or whatever, there's usually a specialist within the company who's actually best set up to answer it. So you want to tag that person instead of saying everybody, hey, read all this and try to figure out whether you're a match or not. So it just cuts down the number of reads from O of n to O of 1, hopefully. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what when you wrote down this thread, so you were specifically looking for, I see that you were looking for sort of some automated sort of recommendations or prioritization kind of stuff. I guess that's what you're sort of talking about here as well.
Yes. So, I mean, essentially, the more of my job you can do for me, then the more valuable you're going to be, right? Because then I don't need to be here, which, like, it should be a threat to me, but I'm not threatened by it. Like, please give me more ideas. So yeah. So people asking me about like actionable prompts, and basically, like, there's a lot of data that are aggregates that are going up and down. Most of the time, when I see the data go up and down and there's a very big jump, very big fall, either I already knew, right? Because I run, like, I was the cause of it, or like something happened and like I would not be doing my job if I did not know what was going on in my community, right? So all these metrics don't really do much except for quantify, like, it was 60%, not 50%. Okay, fantastic, good job. That is not a very valuable thing. I'm not going to pay you, common room is 5 figures a month. I'm not going to pay you 5 figures a month to tell me that. Like, it's really ridiculous, like that you give me a chart that says, oh yeah, you spiked traffic like 10x last week. What happened? I told her Series B. She was like, oh yeah, great, we have a chart for that. I knew that. Come on, like, is this the state of DevRel and community metrics? And I don't know, it's so bullshit. But like, okay, you're like, all right, tell me what to do with that. Tell me, like, so I think the people are trying to go from data to insights, right? Like, and a lot of times they're very used to relying on your users to be smart enough to get their own insights from the data. But I am not smart. The rest of my team is very busy trying to do our day jobs. So the more you can generate insights for me to help me figure out what to do next, the more valuable I'll feel that the tool is. So it's very much like it does the thinking for you, and then makes it easy for you to do the thing. So it gives you some agency, gives you some choice in case you made a mistake, but it makes it one click to do something. So LinkedIn, it finds opportunities for you to connect. Often it's like job anniversaries or people changing jobs, and makes it like a one-liner. Even suggest some really fake text. Like, these are really bad implementation examples, right? But at least they're trying.
Yep.
They're saying we have all the data. Let's do something that you would. Let's try to model behavior that you would want anyway, and make it easier for you to do it.
Right.
So
Got it.
you know, one example is like so for them they track both of them track community members that used to be active that are no longer active, so they're kind of distancing away, right? But for example, for Orbit, the distancing, they'll tell me like this person was last active 7 months ago. What am I supposed to do with that? That person is gone.
It's not actionable.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So so it's very, very tricky. I'm not saying like I know any better, right? Because these guys are just, you know, specialists and whatever. But like it's clearly not there yet. You know, I'm not getting anything actionable. So that's why I talk about it. I think that I think it's definitely a holy grail, because then it'll be indispensable, because then I'll have to pay you every month to keep doing my job. Right now if all you're doing is like, you know, gathering up metrics and telling me things I already know, then okay, I can turn it on, turn it off. Didn't really change my life in any material way, apart from because
so you mentioned this tagging somebody, right? But so I'm just curious about that. Would it be so? Temporal is also, of course, a for-profit sort of a commercial firm. Would it be somebody from your team that would be tagged, or are you thinking more broadly in terms of community, that if there's a question and, you know, there are people who have answered those kind of questions in the past, that you would tag them? I'm wondering, would they get annoyed, right? Like like your own company, of course, that's fine, right? Because it's kind of their job or whatever. But if you start tagging sort of users in general, I don't know how they would take it. I'm just curious, you know, what you are thinking of.
Yeah, well, that's the job of a community manager, which is to have a feel for have they been tagged too much recently? Have they been responsive to prior tags?
So you're saying that's something that you are doing yourself. You are sort of going over some of these discussions and finding the right person to bring into the discussion. Got it. Okay. Fair enough. Makes sense.
You know, yesterday I had some guy was like, I'm looking into Terraform plus temporal, and I surfaced 2 talks that we had done relevant to that, and then I also tagged in the people that were involved in those talks.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's some of these are tricky. You know, I think we'll have to figure out how much a machine can do, how versus, you know, what, you know, humans get pissed if machines start doing too much stuff, you know, and also machines get it wrong, right? That's the other problem, that, you know, that you just can't get it 100%.
But remember what I said, like it's fine, but you can just introduce a confirmation layer before that action is done, right? You can surface the recommendation, just make it one click. Any reduction in friction, because the volume of stuff that we have to do is so high, any reduction in friction is actually very good for us.
Right.
Very, very tangible.
One thing I want to ask you, like, so at least on some of the these open source projects, one of the things we have heard is that data that gets captured inside Slack is not indexed by Google, and so therefore, you know, like the point you raised, that, you know, people finding answers themselves, that whole aspect suffers because of the closed nature of these forums. Are you using any tools, or are you exporting your data already somewhere?
No.
Or, you know?
Not at all. Yeah, so we're not doing that at all. I have had conversations with one startup that is working on doing the Slack to public repo, public repository export, but they've been a bit quiet. So I don't know if they had any success doing it.
Got it. But that would, I mean, would presumably that would be of interest, because it would do the same thing, right? It will reduce some of the burden on you. Although it might also not bring people to the forums. I have heard contradictory things about this, because if people are just finding answers on Google, they may not actually end up joining your Slack forum, and that has a certain amount of value as well, or Slack or Discord forum, right?
For our size right now, that is true. But if we 10x our current size, then we will need something that's more scalable. Right now, we are enjoying the fact that we get to know every single new user individually. We get a chance to say, what do you really use? You know, what's your real use case? And then get a chance to know a little bit about like what company they work at, and if it's a very big deal, important company escalated to sales, like that sort of thing.
Right.
And so sometimes friction is good there. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll definitely say that this is subjective and size dependent. So
yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's nice that you can get those emails and stuff, right? And like the real identity, right? When people join your forum. Yeah. Okay, cool. This was great. I think I got a good sense of what you're looking for and the way you look at this problem. Um,
mostly like I went to I mean as far as founder, being on putting on like the angel investor hat and putting on like the pro founder hat. I kind of view support as like kind of like a defensive case, like all these support tickets coming in, like we'll do something and then we'll go out and buy Clearfeed. Whereas I kind of view the community growth as something a bit more offensive. Like I want to grow. I have a budget to grow. Where do I put that money? Community growth is currently entirely 100% manual by community managers who have no idea what they're doing. So I see some benefit here, and obviously that's why both Common Room and so Common Room is Greylock backed, and Orbit is Andreessen Horowitz backed. So like they both see something there in the community growth space, but the current implementation is very lacking. So I want more ideas thrown at the wall.
Got it. So basically, what I'm hearing from you is that if somebody can help you become more efficient, that's a big win. If somebody can somehow help grow your community, and I think your community metrics are probably users, but also the interactions between the users. I'm not sure how somebody can help that, but whatever. Like that's
actually help me measure that as well. And that there's some people that really want to measure depth of conversation instead of just single number of cases opened.
Right.
And depth of conversation is also a nice metric for community, but I don't think anybody is seriously measuring that. People say they do, they don't.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Carry on.
Yeah, one thing I've been curious about is that like Stack Overflow does a good job of routing questions, to like veteran people who answered a lot of questions, like they can sign up to be to look at new questions and so on. I haven't seen those dynamics in the open source rooms. I don't know if Microsoft has done that. You said the TypeScript forum, and I'll check it out.
I don't think so. I think it's still very manual there. Which really I'm not sure. I'm not sure about how that is done. If you want to implement it, I think there's a minimum size that you have to be before that becomes a realistic endeavor.
Yeah.
So
cool. Ankit, do you have any other questions? I'm kind of done from my side.
No, I think I think your perspective is very clear to us in terms of what you are looking at as the final objective and the shortcomings that you see in the current tools.
Thank you. thanks for reaching out. Thanks for spending time with me. I may not be your target user. So
we're just looking to understand the market and just hear from a lot of different people. It's very early days for us, so we are trying to figure out what's the sweet spot. And I don't think community tooling is or can be our only business. It's just, as I explained to you, it's something of interest because of the large number of users who are on these forums. So if you can add some value, and get some visibility, it just feels like a great fit. Also, there's some fit, right? I mean, in terms of like, again, for depending on, let's see what we discover in the rest of the market. There might be some fit, there might be a few things some people might find appealing and so on. So we are sort of really in discovery phase, and so feedback is very useful. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll keep an eye out for you guys.
Thanks so much.
Obviously,
thank you so much.
Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, have a great day.